If you were wondering how Gen Z men ended up being so conservative this past election, look no further than the three crash outs of media: Anakin Skywalker, Aaron Yeager, and Paul Atreides. All three of these characters are looked at by young men as idols who do cool shit, but also they justify all their horrible crimes because they identify with the characters.
Why though?
I feel like people are beating themselves around the bush when it comes to why these nerds are seeing themselves as the main characters of these revolutionary, liberal, freedom-fighting animes when they're alt-right themselves. It's because the main character of those animes are white or light-skinned. Most of these dystopian stories where the character is fighting for freedom and the liberation of other people, they're not my skin tone.
No!
They're not my boyfriend's skin tone.
No!
They're none of the skin tones of the people from America that have been fighting for the rights of their own people and for others. They look like people like Jake Paul. They're as light-skinned as like any of these, like Mr. Beast and things like that. Even these characters that are supposed to be Japanese, they make sure they give them the same features as the white characters in the very same show. So it's hard to distinguish that Luffy isn't a white American, but people connect to it so much because of how light his skin is, how straight his hair is. So a lot of these alt-right people think they're the main characters of these stories about uplifting the oppressed because those characters look just like them. You wouldn't have that problem if these characters that were the main characters uplifting and causing revolutions were darker skinned.
Yatta!
Like, you see how people react to the Astrid actor. Just a little bit of melanin, not even that much, but knowing that she's a little bit of black, you know, people can't relate to her. If Luffy from the live action One Piece had a little bit more melanin than they did in the show, alt-right people wouldn't fuck with the live action Luffy because they say it's not accurate. So other than a lot of these people being lonely, and that's why they turn alt-right, a lot of their icons that they look up to look like themselves, and they think they're part of the people that are revolutionaries fighting for the oppressed when they're not. But they can't see that they're not because the characters they look up to have the same skin tone as them. These alt-right people wouldn't see themselves as the main characters if the characters had a bit more melanin and a bit more curlier hair than them.
Now, if you're still here, I can only imagine that you're either in the comments cursing us out, calling us delusional, saying we're focusing too much on race, or you are intrigued about what we're saying. Now, me, while I also believe that part of the reason why these red pillars, alt-righters, right-wingers are imprinting onto these very clearly genocidal maniacs, partly because they're white, I also believe there are two other things at play here. Now, the first thing, we made being a Nazi cool. Listen to what I just said. We made being a Nazi cool. I realized this in my 20s. Why? Because one day I realized that on my ring, I have the Imperial cog. And that's essentially a Nazi symbol. And don't get me wrong, I love George Lucas. I love Star Wars universe. However, we made being a Nazi cool. Think about it. Who is the most recognizable character from Star Wars? Darth Vader. And him and Lord Sidious are space Nazis. That was George's intention. His intentions and his subliminals was anti-imperialism. However, for whatever reason, the thing that popped was Lord Vader and stormtroopers. Literally stormtroopers after fucking Nazis. Now, I don't really blame George Lucas because I feel like he was doing what he could. However, this is where we get into the second thing that's at play here. Have you guys ever heard the quote, and hopefully I'm not butchering it, true equality feels like oppression to the oppressor? What we have is a lot of stories where we got white people or ambiguously white people who are the main characters of the stories They are being oppressed, but there's no nuance or context in that story as to really why they're being oppressed. And because nowadays we have this whole thing where marginalized people are asking for freedom. Matter of fact, we're not asking. Most of us are taking our freedoms back, and is why everything is happening the way it is now. And a lot of those right-wingers, white males, feel like they are being oppressed because they can no longer treat marginalized people inhumanely without consequence. Or at least that's how it was before Agent Orange and MAGA. Those are the two things that play. We may be Nazi cool, and we put white males in mainstream media at the forefront in stories about oppression. And that's with anything. That's Star Wars, comic books, anything in anime, that's anything. And we did that. And because we did that, and keep in mind, it wasn't we, it was them. Because they did that, and because what's going on, they fallen into this idea that they are oppressed. So they feel like Anakin before the suit. They feel like that's justified what they did. But I bet if Aaron from Attack on Titan was Aaron from Attack the Block, we would not be having a conversation about how he is justified in doing what he did. Think about it. It's as simple as changing the race of the character. And we already heard constantly that white males, for whatever reason, can't identify with black characters. So whenever a black character comes along, that character gets ignored. It's deeper than just the fact of representation. They see themselves in these characters because they literally seeing their phenotypes, but they're also seeing other connections in things they identify with. That's the video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell me what you think. You think we crazy? I know most people think we're crazy. I don't know if we're going to get a whole bunch of thumb down and that sort of thing. And honestly, I don't care. We have to have open and honest conversation if we want things to get better. And that goes for everybody. If you are a white person and you are a logical person, you should be able to have this conversation and think about what we said. But I doubt we get that because it's YouTube and these comments be filled with all types of hate. And I filter those out for the most part. I only allow the people who are logical to have the conversation with me. And respectful, that is. So, but thank you. Thank you for watching.
The bamboo earrings, baby.